not qualified to talk about legal issues or regulatory issues. So any understanding you have of the law as a version based on what I've said, that's your fault. All right, so we start with a standard disclaimer. So, you know, law, legal, regulatory, these are frameworks by which the government and society restrict the natural, greedy human behavior, right? Because we are all fundamentally greedy, at least I am, right? And left to our own devices, we'll just trample all over each other. And by having frameworks and rules and laws and social structure, we create order. So, how many here have heard about the South Sea Company? Who here knows about the South Sea Company? There's one person in the room who's a student of history. The rest of you should study some history. In 1711, the South Sea Company was formed in England by royal charter to have exclusive trading rights or capacity with South America.
And the stocks went up really, really high, and then they died for
crazy high. All right? This was the first stock bubble ever. And a lot of people lost their shirt as a result. It was unregulated at the time. There was no regulation. Wow, this is cool. We can do this. And then a whole bunch of people were essentially lynched. All right? They did what they thought was great. Everyone pounded in. Everyone thought they were all going to make money. And then they lost money. And then, you know, bad things happened. Laws always catch up from behind. So right now, there is no legal regulatory framework on ICOs. Right? We just heard that. That's today. Back when the DAO formed, I have publicly stood up and said, this is a security, looks like one, smells like one,
qualified
quacks
DAO.
like one.
Qualified DAO.
The distributed autonomous organization, Etherium thing. If people don't know what DAO is, you should be studying that because that's part of the history of some of these ICOs. That was a $150 million ICO effectively on Ethereum. It was a distributed autonomous organization. No shares, no shareholders, no governance. You guys, people with the money in, get to vote on where the money goes. Woohoo, we don't. Who needs corporations? About a week later, everything was vacuumed out of it, or a third of its assets were vacuumed out from underneath it. Right? All hell broke loose. We now have 2 copies of Ethereum and Ethereum Classic.
It was hacked.
It was, you could say hacked. You could say it was used precisely as the code was written.
Yeah, right.
Right? Jury's out on that. There are two universes. One of $1 billion says it was perfectly done. Right? One where 10 billion or 30 billion says that was a hack and we'll undo it. Weird. It's a weird environment. So parallel universes in real life. Anyway, as you go back, it looked like a duck. It smelled like a duck. It quacks like a duck. It's a duck. That didn't earn me any brownie points, right? At the time, people thought I was crazy, standing in the way, being an idiot. However, the U.S. Securities Commission has recently stated that it was a security, and that while they're not going to do anything about it, people are now warned. The U.S. Securities Exchange Commission and Canada's CSA, or the whatever it stands for, has issued an interpretation, right? And they say that if it's a security, it will be treated as a security, right? How many people have heard of the Howey test? Hands up. Okay, not too many. If you're going to be doing an ICO, please educate yourself and know these things, okay? This is dangerous territory. Very dangerous territory. Ethereum was founded in Canada and left Canada because they could not obtain regulatory certainty as to whether or not it would be legal to do this crowd sale for Ethereum, right? This was pretty difficult. They spent, I think it was about $10 million, right, to figure out in advance whether or not they could do this legally, and determined maybe yes was all the lawyers could give them. So they went to Switzerland, where they could get an official, yes, you can do this provided you do the following 4 things, right? Kick, when they raised, they only raised from US investors. They did not allow anybody except with a US passport because they were following US Securities Exchange Commission rules, right? We have seen a huge freeze in ICOs because regulators are now looking at them, right? If it looks like a stock, right? If you use the word fundraising in the very first chart, I don't know how to get to it, but you said fundraising, right? Non-dilutive fundraising. If that's what you are doing, it is extremely likely that you are building a security, okay? And that you will be subject to securities regulation. That's my John Shannon interpretation. It is not the Crown's interpretation, right? I'm just a cautious guy who's lived a lot, all right? And if it was me, right, I'm not saying I wouldn't do an ICO. What I would do, however, is I would take the high road, and I would do it according to securities regulation. I would get a lawyer, figure out what I have to do. Let's pretend this is a security. Now, what do I need to do? And you know what it turns out you need to do? You have to issue a prospectus, right? You have to basically say, this is what I'm going to do. You may need to be fingerprinted. You may need to register with the SEC. It may need to take 3 to 6 months of elapsed, painful proctology, all right? But if you do that, then you will be doing it right, and you'll be legal, right? At least you won't be illegal, which is the thing. We happen to live in Canada. If you want to go scampering off to Switzerland, be my guest, right? But we don't have that freedom here. And when we are, right, in a society, we live by the laws of the society we live in. So I would say be really, really, really careful about the just thinking that because it's a cryptocurrency, we can do an ICO, blue skies and lollipops. Because I suspect it's going to turn into a regulated thing. Question?
Okay, so basically right now, I think it was just now with the recent collapse in Bitcoin that they started talking about regulating these things in the US. So say you want to do the thing that you're saying, right? So it takes 6 months. No one has the patience for no one's going to actually go for that. They prefer to just go and buy up the ICO and whatever get in trouble for it later or whatever. And it's
absolutely. There's a strategy that says, right? There's the Uber strategy. See, Uber was illegally operating in Ottawa for the longest period of time, but so far Uber's not been clapped in jail.
Right.
Right? So there, I am not going to counsel anybody to undertake an illegal act, right? I will say that if you do that, it's on you. Okay?
There's a difference between buying the ICO and issuing the ICO.
Yeah,
You're talking about the issuer of the ICO.
As the issuer of the ICO, right? You have tremendous obligations, right? And responsibilities. As the buyer of a token, great, you're the owner of a token. But if you sell it, you're an issuer. Okay? So you can't get rid of it easily. Okay? You are restricted in disposition of these darn things. Okay? And it's a problem. And may not be a problem necessarily from a regulator. But let's say you do an ICO, I give you $10,000, and South Sea Bubble takes effect, your token collapses to nothing. Guess what? You owe me. If you didn't follow all the securities disclosures, there is so much case law that my little small claims action is going to roll over you like a small grease spot. Right? I will succeed and I'll take your house. Unless there's lots of us and they get to you first, because I'm going to be quick. Okay? So there are civil liabilities to issuers, and there are securities law liabilities to issuers. Right? This is not something to do just woohoo, right? Get a lawyer or be judgment proof. One of the two. Okay.
lawyers who actually acknowledge the fact that this is a growing business, right?
It's a
Most of
huge
them
growing
have
business.
the education to do that.
That it is.
Pardon me?
I'm a lawyer right here from WL.
There's a lawyer over there, and they're learning quickly.
Very quickly.
Okay? They want to learn quickly. This is a phenomenal space. As much as I'm talking about this, by the way, I am probably one of Canada's biggest fans of cryptocurrency. I believe there's a huge opportunity for this, what I'm going to call distributed ledger technology.
At least within the government.
Within and across public-private collaboration. And it's really this simple. Can I go off script for a little bit?
By all means, take as much time as you want.
Imagine, what is the purpose? What's all the fuss about these blockchains and everything like that? Well, it's a mechanism of distributing trust from, two people far away. All they have to do is trust each other. The mechanism by which they communicate in between, right, is automatically trusted. Now, we've been around 150 years, I'm wearing the pin, and we've built systems. We've built a system of government, we've built a system of laws, we've built a system of banks. And these are the institutions that we have built a society around to transmit that trust across a nation, right? But we're what, 0.5% of the planet? The other rest of the planet, most of them are missing one of those three systems. And they're going to use this type of technology, right, to fill in the blanks for the missing institutions that they don't have. And when they do that, they're going to have a set of institutional trust, like we have a set of institutional trust, that will be cheaper, right? And therefore they have to tax their citizens less to get the same things done, because math is cheaper than meetings, right? And so if we as Canada don't jump on, don't figure out how to take this technology and replace and augment and basically cannibalize our existing systems, we're going to be left behind, like we got left behind with the mobile phone. I don't know, most of us are old enough to remember mobile or phones on every desk. I was around inventing phones when they were like suitcase, right? Who needs a stupid mobile phone? There's a phone in every office, there's a phone in every house, and there's a phone on every other street corner.
Did you ever have beers with Alexander Graham Bell?
I did not. I'm not that old. But my grandfather did. But anyway, if you go back, we pardon me?
Jordan does that for you all the time.
So, we didn't need the mobile phone. So we didn't really invest in it until it was kind of like out there and made. And other countries that did have passed us. You go to countries where they have 98% penetration of mobile phones and the stuff they can do, right? Because the technology and the infrastructure are there. It's awesome. And we're playing catch up. So we're not going to do that with this technology, not on my watch. And that's what I'm doing inside the government. So I'm actively helping Treasury Board, actively helping a number of different government organizations wrap heads around using this technology. Yes, sir, in the back.
Is this not just a good argument for us to be flying to Crypto Valley or Barbados to be starting these companies?
No, it's a complete argument against it, right? What we need to do is find out ways of doing it right. And we need people, we need you to help my peers, okay, understand that it's necessary to do things to create channels and frameworks that make certainty possible, all right? Because I'm just a little voice in the wilderness saying, excuse me, we need regulatory certainty on this, right? If you all go and talk and say we need regulatory certainty, then we can get it, right? If Canada establishes regulatory certainty before any other G7 nation, we will own the blockchain space, and we can do that.
And you're losing the race already.
We're
rapidly.
I get it. Don't shoot messenger.
Yeah, no, of course. But Canada, it saddens me as someone who's involved in it. I'm just looking at it, and look what's happening in Switzerland. Look what's happening in Japan. Look what's happening in, or even look what's happening in Venezuela.
The good news is the U.S. is completely constipated. right, when it comes to this. All right? So they're 10 times larger than we are, and they are our market. We have some structure in the US. Crypto is federally, or securities are federally regulated, but banking, right, is state by state by state by state. In Canada, banking is federally regulated, but securities are province by province by province by province. So there's some interesting tensions there. If we can get our act together province by province by province by province, we could do some things. We don't have to own the world, just a chunk of it that's bigger than Canada. Go.
Government is notoriously adverse to change.
Oh yeah, tell me about it.
And I see Canadian government becoming more and more bureaucratic and more entrenched. Who do you think will lead the charge for adopting this technology?
You will.
No, I mean within the government.
This meetup.
No, I am right now undertaking an experiment where grants and contributions are being recorded on the Ethereum blockchain.
I was gonna say,
Okay, so government is strongly looking at use cases for taking Government of Canada function and exporting them to distributed ledger technology, active. Okay.
I was just gonna add to that, yeah, today it said the Bank of Canada was actually seriously looking into the digital currency market.
Project Jasper, right, has explored what's called the LVTS, or Large Value Transfer System, right, which is the way all money in Canada is shuttled around between banks. Project Jasper is looked at by the world as a world-leading implementation, institutionalized implementation of this technology. Yeah.
How is Jasper ahead of Ripple then?
Because the banks are actually using it, as opposed to,
The banks actually use Ripple, do they not?
some US banks are using it. In Canada, it's looking like they're gonna get their act together and actually, there's a difference between looking at it and actually using it. Everybody everywhere is looking at cryptocurrency, distributed ledger technology, ZK snarks, etc. Unfortunately, the fundamental use case so far, the only fundamental use case so far that's been found that is intact, right, is trading these things with each other and gambling, right, and transfer of tokenized assets.
Isn't Ripple the settlement of international markets?
It is not the.
Well, it's,
No.
that's its.
It's scratching. That's its. Shall we say aspiration? Right. It isn't there yet.
Remember, we're in the space where nobody has an exclusive on anything.
But another use case is government contracts, and Zenfin is building that right now.
Yeah. We're actually using it right now too, right?
That's gonna be big too.
So, where you see the government. Okay, I'm gonna get on a different soapbox if you want for a second. These technologies grew up out of the cypherpunks, right? Basically saying we don't believe in government. We can be doing all these things without government, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, get off my back, do it, etc. Okay. And there's a set of technologies that are built, particularly like the proof of work, consensus algorithms, that are designed to be robust in the event where there is no trust anywhere. These are hugely expensive. You know, electricity bill of city-states,
One
nations.
part of 1,000th of the global electrical consumption has just been passed with Bitcoin.
On
This is
proof,
becoming a
this is
serious problem.
proof of work, right? And this is because they want to build a system that needs no trust. Okay? Well,
But
now,
our main fear is governments hacking it. That's our main fear.
no, but let me
Is the
turn it
Federal
around.
Reserve coming in one day, printing their own thing, or the Kremlin, and attacking the system at a 51%.
There's the cypherpunk perspective. Turn it around, and we say, you know what? We have created government as an institution of trust. Who do you trust? All right? And for better or worse, that's where birth certificates are, things like that are. If we would be willing to hand a little bit of trust. When you get into things like proof of stake, proof of other things, this is trust me in disguise, right? If you look at a proof of stake model, Ethereum, for example, Ethereum says, whoa, we're gonna have staking, right? Well, who's staking? Those are the guys you need to trust. If you're not staking, right, you're trusting them. Who are they? You trust them. And by the way, Ethereum has a limit of 1,000 stakers. Otherwise, the thing collapses. So they got staking pools. Oh, South Sea Bubble, anybody? These are little companies, right? Who owns it? Who's actually in there making the decisions? And if that staking pool gets slashed, it's not that staker who's getting slashed, it's your money. It's your deposits that will go away if those guys do something bad. And if they can leverage their mistake for their benefit and your assets get evaporated, okay, Bernie Madoff, all right, just new vehicles for folks like Bernie to make billions on your backs. This is proof of, this is trust, and we don't see it coming. Or most people don't see it coming, right? So if we were to build consensus algorithms where the trust is actually, you know what, it's there, we should trust it, and we can take some institutions that we can trust, then strong countries like Canada, where we can actually trust our government, right, where we can trust our banks, where we can trust our legal system, these can be the pillars of a non-energy consuming mechanism where the people can be keeping the government honest, and the government can be saying, you can trust, because we're also there verifying. So trust and verify, those two things together, that makes it a really interesting system. Really, really interesting to think through. It's completely orthogonal to what most people are looking at. But I think that would be an opportunity for this room to think through it. But that's completely off the topic of ICOs. Sorry, I went there.
Any other questions for Mr. Shannon?
The very trust that you talk about, taking the example of Bernie Madoff, he did all that right under the purview of SEC.
Absolutely.
With their participation. So this whole trust thing, the government is selling us. How much do we buy into that?
As much as you want. You're absolutely right. At the same time, it's trust but verified. The purpose of the SEC, okay, these investors were asleep at the switch. They were not reading the documents that are required to be created for their benefit, okay? So I'm not about putting training wheels on every bicycle just in case people don't fall off. I think that just slows people down.
There was some documentaries that say that SEC knew about it, the head of SEC, but decided not to act on it because there was pressure from the higher side. So
I don't know enough about it.
And all that, this is all, they lost their trust, basically, that's what it is.
It's breach, you will always have breach of trust, okay? But if you let an entire community go nuts, they will, right? So one Bernie Madoff versus 1,000 John Shannons, which do you want? I'm not sure. And I know who I am. I would trust me, but, you know, to the end of the day. Anyway.
You good?
Are there any other, my point is, watch out for securities regulatory pressure. It's not regulated now. I suspect it will be, and I suspect cases will be made. So take the moral high ground. Take the time to be educated. Get competent advice. I don't know whether you're competent or not, but you know, that I'll leave to you. And
Last question. Or last two
Once they
questions.
regulate it, won't it just make it so expensive to kind of defeat half the purpose, and people are still just gonna go to Barbados anyways? Like, do you have any faith that they're gonna do it in a way that's just not gonna stifle the hell out of it?
I think there's always a little bit of stifling involved, right? My hope is, right, that we can find some certainty without a lot of cost. The good news is, this is a brand new space. So there's an opportunity to carve it out. The other thing you're seeing from regulators, they have the opportunity right now to be saying, all these things are regulated and we're dark. They're taking a step back and saying, you know what, we're going to look at this. We're going to look at this within the framework right? We have the right to, but we're taking our time. So you're seeing regulators who are giving you the opportunity, right, to do things right. And Canada has another structure, correct me if I'm wrong, but ours is not a proscriptive, this is what you're supposed to do, you do A, B, C, D, and you're safe. Canada is a principle-based regulatory environment, right? What it means is you need to demonstrate that you are in keeping with the principles of the regulation. So you get a great deal of interpretive latitude, and if you work with the regulators, and I'm trying to get some access to regulators, it's very hard, but if we can get access to regulators and say, you know what, is this interpretation okay? We might be able to do this.
Yeah, the OSC has a launchpad.
Yes.
Sandbox. That you can bring your ICO to, they will spend time discussing it with you, what you're wanting to do, and they have worked with our clients to put in place a structure that allows the ICO to go forward. They keep an eye on it, and it's progressing. They're progressing with the legislation, with the technology, and with what people are wanting to do. So they are very open to it.
So stifling, yes, because that's their job, right? But not suffocating. Okay?
All right, we're gonna have to cut it short soon, otherwise the next two speakers are not gonna have their time.
I'm out of here.
John Shannon, everybody. All right, we're gonna take a